All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Terza with the Parsons Entrepreneur Academy. Thank you all for joining us today for our second installment in a series called Behind the Creative. Here we invite successful and inspiring creative entrepreneurs to share their story and lessons they've learned along the way. For those of you joining us for the first time, the Parsons Entrepreneur Academy is a platform that empowers creative entrepreneurs like yourself to build sustainable businesses around your art. We'll have about 35 to 40 minutes of chat time before opening up for Q&A with the audience. Today, we're thrilled to be joined by Negele, known on the internet as Hospey, a digital content strategist and creative producer who has collaborated with artists including Corday, Chance the Rapper, amongst many others, and labels including Universal Music Group and EMI Records. Currently, he's the social media and digital marketing lead at Advanced Music. And on that note, please welcome today's guest, Hospey. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Appreciate you for having me. It's gonna be fun.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're super thrilled to have you. It was an easy decision. So thank you for coming on board.
Appreciate
So
it.
tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, how you started in your creative line of work.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, as you mentioned, I'm a creative strategist, content strategist, really anything in the digital realm. I'm Canadian, so I grew up in Victoria, BC, Canada, which if there's any Americans in here, you'll probably have no idea where that's at. But I've spent, a lot of my last 10 years. I started in Calgary for university at the University of Calgary out there before heading out to Sydney for a little bit, spent some time in London, LA, and now I'm actually currently based in Montreal. As you mentioned as well, I work with artists, labels, brands, businesses, kind of whoever, helping them with those strategies that they can use to approach new audiences, build that engagement, just anything in that digital realm. So, yeah.
Amazing. So you're a little bit of a globetrotter and a digital nomad, I see. So what
I
made
try
you,
to.
that's amazing. So what made you kind of travel around the world and move to all of these different cities?
I think for me, it was definitely a mix of a couple of things. I think I needed to get out of where I was from. It's a little too small for me, and I always wanted to be in those bigger places where there was stuff going on. I think culturally, it's pretty important. It's part of that creative diet where if I'm in a place that has a lot of amazing, events going on, whether it's concerts or other things like that, I think it's important to, be in those spaces just for my own output. And then also, I think it's just, I've always been somebody who's been trying to chase the opportunity, and I think that there's so many amazing, art cities in the world. I just wanted to be
Mhm.
in there and and get into those places.
Amazing. So what's your favorite city so far that you've lived in?
Um, I think I think I'd have to say London. I think London. I spent two
Amazing.
years out there. It was one of those places that I never really wanted to go when I was younger. I didn't think it was going to be, um, a place that I really enjoyed, and I planned to go out there for 4 or 5 months, and ended up just loving it. There's so much vibrant culture. I feel like tucked underneath the government or whatever other cultures that you would initially think of with London. There's so much great stuff there. But and then I guess a close second would be LA, just because for a young creative, I don't think there's another better place that you could be.
Totally. And it's cool because a lot of like London's culture mirrors a lot of the stuff that we do out here in
Yeah,
on the West Side, which is awesome. So it's kind of
yeah,
a nice transition. Being able to kind of work in both cities is really dope.
yeah.
Um, cool. So there's a question that I ask a lot of creatives, and I love this question, but what made you decide to follow a creative career choice, although it's very risky, rather than something a lot more stable, like your regular 9 to 5? Yeah, tell us a bit more
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, I think for me it was always just it was something I was always being led to, no matter what I was, currently interested in. I think there was always a pull to, creativity. So whether I was in high school making just like dumb YouTube videos, or doodling in university, and eventually just posting that stuff wherever. I feel like I've always had a creative passion in the backdrop that's kind of always been fueling me, no matter what. So I think that was, initially it was something that I kind of tried to push to the side and just have it be that side thing. But as I got further on, especially in university, I think I really found a passion for it. So I think one of the first things that really pushed it forward was when I started this blog in university called RLGT. So those are some of the best, the best years of my life in terms of creativity, because it was just a bunch of, university students who were interested in the culture and stuff that was going on in countries away, that we were just trying to be a part of. So I think that was the big first taste of like, okay, we can do this. People are actually interested. You can make a tad money. We didn't make very much, but we sold a couple T-shirts here and there, and just had so much fun doing it that I knew, if I was able to transition into doing something like this full time, would be huge. And also, I just think I'm not really cut out for the 9 to 5 life. I love the freedoms too much of being a creative, and as much of the drawback as it has sometimes, I think I wouldn't change it for anything.
Yeah, definitely. I'm also a freelance creative, so like I definitely feel you on that front. So
Yeah.
what was that first project, the blog, ROTG? What was that about, and how did it start? Tell us more about that.
Yeah, RLGT, it was red leaf gold teeth. So basically, it was Canadian urban culture. And the whole point of that was really, I just switched faculties out of business. I had no idea what I was doing at the time. I was writing a ton of papers for communications, and really every single chance I got, I would skew it to hip hop or skew it to another piece of the culture. So the initial reason that I started was just so that I could post some of those things. I was like, yeah, I just wrote 2,000 words on, whatever, maybe Kanye West. Like, I definitely want this to get some burn. So I was posting them, I was posting it anonymously. And then a friend noticed that I was doing it. And he was like, yo, we should do this as a bigger project. It's been something he'd been wanting to do, I guess. So we ended up bringing 4 or 5 more friends on and just, going after it. So I wrote 400 articles that first year. We did 100,000 page views in the first 11 months. It was like something that we didn't really expect coming, and we were just really working with it as time was going. So the merch or whatever else it was, we
Mhm.
really just decided that we wanted to do it, figured out how we would get it done, and put it out there. And we were lucky to have such a supportive group of people around us. I think that's one of the cool things about university. Um, Obviously, for a lot of creatives, they feel like it's not maybe the space for them to go. But for me, what was so important about that time was just that you have so many people from everywhere in the world with so many different interests, but there is these few things that really tie it all together. Like this cultural thing. So we had engineers writing us pieces. We had people who were going to go into
Amazing.
med school, and whatever else it may be, who were just like, "Yo, I actually do photography on the weekends. Like, can I shoot some stuff for you?" Or I do graphic design, but I'm not using it at all for my degree. So that was my first real taste of it, and it was, I'd never changed that experience for sure.
That's amazing. It's awesome that you also were able to build a community and kind of bring together people into one place, whether they're from different backgrounds, different kind of, careers, different,
Yeah,
walks of life, kind of like what we're trying to do over here at Parsons Entrepreneur Academy as well. So that's awesome.
yeah,
So growing up in a small city, I used to live in Vancouver too. And so I know how
yeah.
small it is. The creative community is really small.
Mhm.
And I mean, especially you weren't even in like Vancouver, you were like in somewhere much smaller.
Yeah.
What inspired you to leave? Like, what was it that, maybe something that you saw on the internet, something that you were inspired by online? Like, what was the one thing that made you want to leave and kind of explore the world?
I think it was a culmination of things for sure. I actually was born in a bigger city, which I will not name. I'm just kidding. I'm from Edmonton, which as Canadians, it's not one of those cool Canadian cities. So I lived there for 10 years. So I was definitely from a bigger city as I was a smaller child, and I think that was just kind of intrinsically in me. But I just think that, well, I guess I got an experience to travel quite a bit as a child as well, which, I was definitely blessed to have. So I was able to see a little bit. And I think once you have that taste, you realize that, like, there's so many things to see, so many things to do. And I think it's, my interest in traveling, I think, is really the same as my interest in internet and digital things. Is like, you can, for me, because I came out of such a small spot, I think doing these digital things means that I can, help artists or businesses or whoever engage with those kids in the small towns who want to be a part of
Yeah,
the culture, or whatever. And so it's, for me, I was physically putting myself in these places, but I think also being able to do that over the internet has been, a huge blessing for me.
totally. That's great.
Yeah.
So what was kind of like your big break? Like, what was the first project that kind of got you out there, that, got your name out, and kind of got you kickstarted in the industry?
Yeah, I think the obvious one there for me would be the chance experience.
Yeah.
So
So tell us
about
more about that. Like, what, how did you come up with such a unique and brilliant campaign, and how did you land the opportunity to work with Chance?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, about 6 months after I graduated, I was living in Australia, and the background on that is that while I was running this hip hop blog, and all sorts of stuff, like I was a Chance the Rapper super fan. This was during the peak, but
Totally. Same here.
yeah, exactly. What we all. So yeah, I was a super fan. I'd probably seen him 5 times in concert before I'd ever even gotten chance to even connect or work with him. But so basically, he put out a tweet one day saying that he was looking for an intern, and being a Twitter kid and having this, I was actually in a group chat, or still in a group chat to this day for maybe 5 or 6 years of originally just all Chance stands, and they knew all the stuff that I was doing creatively, and that I just graduated and I was looking for something cool to do, and they sent to me like, "Yeah, you should definitely apply for this. This would be the craziest thing ever." And at first, I kind of brushed it to the side, but eventually he followed up on the tweet and dropped an email link that was basically like, submit your decks here. And I'm like, okay, so he's actually serious about this. Like, why not? So I literally spent one day just from morning to night building a website to host my resume on. It was called Chance Hire Hospey. And basically what I did was I built a little, I called it the cover letter tour. So I had all the important dates in my creative journey thus far. And I turned it into a little tour poster, and I had, my resume written out as like as a description of the concert as well, kind of. And basically, part of that campaign was just going on the internet, creating this hashtag, and engaging as many people as I could quickly, because at the time, and even to this day, I think it goes back to that creative output and creative diet, I guess I would say. But I feel like I'm able to see patterns and stuff on the internet that it's helpful to obviously in the line of work. But at the time, I was able to say, okay, this is how people get big tweets. This is how people get noticed by artists. You always see the same people having those interactions and engagements. So at the time, I knew what I would have to do to kind of try to get it boom. And I had to be the first person to reply. I had to, get a couple people to like it instantly or whatever it was. And so, fortunately enough, I thought I was going to be spending a couple of weeks trying to get him to see this. And one of the first tweets that I replied to with this little Chance Hire Hospey thing, he ended up seeing pretty much right away. The funny tidbit about that is that I actually screwed up the link when I dropped it in there, because I was in such a hurry to try to send the link right away. And he said, "Saw this. This is dope, but like the link isn't working, basically." And I had to follow up and drop the real one. But when he did see it, he replied back and said, "Just saw this. This is dope. I'm impressed." And all of it, from there, it was off to the races, where hundreds and even thousands of people were retweeting it, showing love to it, saying that they were going to apply, but that they wouldn't have gone this hard for it, and that I deserve all that. Within the few weeks after that, the Breakfast Club in the States, different websites. I was on the Chicago Tribune for a crazy amount of just like publications really gassing up this resume, which was crazy to me at the time. And yeah, eventually I got the text that said, you want to come join me on tour, basically, the following week." And so I went out there, did that for 2 months, and that's kind of where my career started. So I'm crazily blessed for that.
That's incredible. I think that's such a unique way to kind of get someone get someone's attention on your work. I feel like a lot of the times people just cold email, but you literally built a website for like a resume, and you started a hashtag, which is really, really clever, especially in our kind of digital age, and also considering the time that would have happened as well. Hashtags were
Mhm.
huge.
Yeah.
So obviously something like that takes a lot of creative process. So what does kind of your creative process look like when you are thinking of strategies and thinking of these kind of, whether it's like social media strategies or whatnot for clients? Like, what does that creative process look like?
Yeah. I would say what I do now with clients definitely mirrors what I've been doing for a long time, whether it's with my own creative stuff. And really the process just boils down to, when we're talking about content strategy, we're really starting at like the basis of marketing, and kind of building the blocks and applying, um, the semantic associations with each one of those things. And to put it in, I guess, simpler terms, or just more like, easy to understand, An example of this would be, so recently I did a strategic planning session for a podcast actually, and so an example of this would be a client might come to me and say, "Hey, this is the type of content we want to do," or they might not even know what type of content it is. But basically, what we'll look at, we start all the way at the basic building blocks, like I mentioned. So we'll go and say something like, "Okay, what is the purpose of this organization or this artist or this rollout or this project, whatever it is." We start at the purpose, and we also start at the audience, because really, um, if you don't have your audience defined in content, it's null and void at that point. So really we start there, and then, so for in this example, we were able to say, okay, we're trying to engage young Black music professionals and give them more opportunities to tap in with mentorship, say, for something like that, for example. So we might start there and then say, okay, what platforms are these people on? What is the attention span? Like, what type of content do they like to take in? Is it audio only? Is it video? What platform should we be posting this on, et cetera? So we might start all the way at the basic stuff there, and then we just keep building up from there. So within a 3 to 5 hour, maybe it's a couple sessions, maybe it's one session, we're able to lay down that baseline strategy, and then from there, that's the macro, and then basically we're looking at the micro. So I might take that session, and then they either will take that roadmap and bring it to whatever service provider they have or in-house team, etc., or they might hand it off to me, and whether that's me solo or with my team at elsewhere. And then from there, we're doing the exact same thing with each kind of step of the process. Who we're hiring to do this, we're trying to. I think a big reason why this type of strategy is getting more popular is because, uh, in an age when we're thinking about inclusivity,
Hmm.
it's really important. So it might be stuff even like, okay, what photographer are we hiring? Are we putting people, POC people in an opportunity to work on this project? Are the women involved? Is there who are we involving in this stuff? What type of content are we doing? How are we, what segments of the audience are we doing this stuff for? I think all that stuff's really important in strategy, especially when we're talking about content. So that's kind of a beginner crash course on kind of what I would do with a client and what I've been trying to do forever. Yeah,
Thank you for sharing. That's awesome.
yeah,
So when it comes to hiring creatives, once you've built, the basics of your marketing strategy and what you're looking for in a creative process, how do you go about finding the creatives and finding the right team and building the right body of people to execute a project? Like, what do you look for if, say, you're looking for a photographer or someone who specializes in typography or cover art or what have you? Like, how do
yeah.
you go about finding those people?
I'd say it definitely depends on the project. Because when I'm doing these personal projects, I'm very fortunate that I have such a big network of, of creatives. And again, to touch on it again, it was part of that, the creative input that I'm taking in. I'm always consuming content. I'm always looking around and seeing what people are doing. So I think I've got a pretty good, lexicon of creatives that I'm like, what, I know exactly the person that I want to do this with. And even when I am, meeting up with people or speaking with people who are new to my network or whatever, I always make it a point of emphasis to be like, what is it that you do exactly, and what is it that's like you would. What is it that you'd like to do? Like, what projects are you trying to be on? What are you trying to do? Because it's so easy for me then to go down the road a few weeks later and have somebody say, "Hey, this is what we're trying to do. This is what we're hoping to get over. This is the person we need." It's a lot easier for me to go back and say, "Hey, I know exactly the person," so I'm able to just pull it out. And if we're talking with clients, I think it's all very specific, I guess, depending on what it is that we're doing on that project. And I think fit is everything with these types of projects. So I honestly like to work with other creative directors, et cetera, and be like, bring in your team. Let's see what we can do here. So I think a lot of it starts at the top, because there's lots of production companies that are getting work where other ones aren't, because of some of these same inclusivity things that we're talking about. So I definitely try to spread the love that way, I think.
That's great. And do you find it difficult to work in collaborative spaces, like if there's multiple creative directors, or do you prefer to kind of do things solo and then kind of build your team as you go on?
No, I think there's room for both, but I think I probably work the best in a collaborative space where I can have as many people around that we can be just like bumping ideas off each other. Like, so I think with something like Elser, which is the production company that we had started during COVID, which is just a fully remote, me and three friends from around the world, who we really were just coming together and just chat and throwing ideas around, like, and eventually you find that thing that's like, okay, this is going to stick. I think it's a lot easier to do it that way than trying to, sit by yourself and get in that zone and be like, okay, well, what is this idea? What are we going to do? Because I think everything creatively involves development. You always got to take that idea and, refine it. I think having other people around helps that.
Totally. So it's clear and evident that you're booked and busy, whether that's like, your own personal work or if it's clients. Where do you source inspiration for your work?
I'd say I think my biggest sources is just what I'm taking in. Like, I'm always like, my girlfriend can attest this, I'm always walking around the house with, my phone watching a YouTube vlog or whatever, maybe listening to podcast interviews is a big thing for me to be able to pull some of the sources. If I'm working during the day, I almost always have a Twitch stream up that I'm watching. I'm always just trying to consume as much media as possible. So I have a pretty diverse range of stuff that I bring in. Yeah.
Amazing. And so what are some of the platforms you use to kind of stay on top of trends and culture?
Um, I'd say I don't know if there's particular platforms, because honestly, I think the for me at least, or in the stuff that I'm interested in, a lot of the platform era has died a little bit over the last little while, where it's more independent creative. So like right now, I'm was more interested in like a few specific creators. So say it's on Twitch, I'm really interested in the gaming community right now, and it's more so on the creator side, the entertainment side, than the esports side of things. But like those creators there, I think they're pretty amazing. Like how they engage audience in a completely new way than has ever really been done before. I think there's people within the sports space, so Knicks Fan TV, these other live streamers who are really doing amazing grassroots things, and just watching how they build. I think that's more what I'm concerned about, is like how do they develop this within this audience over time, as opposed to just like what is the content that they're making itself, and that's everything. Because when we're boiling down that strategy, everything is about that growth there.
Totally. And I feel like as creatives, it's hard for us to now look at like all the media that's being disseminated and not just see it as a media, but like kind of break it down like, oh my God, like what was the audience that this was made for?
Yeah.
Who are the creatives behind this? Like, how can I kind of pull from this? So yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, what are the reasons that, keep you interested in what you're doing? Like what motivates you to keep on going in the industry? Because obviously it's a dog eat dog world and it's a pretty
It is.
cutthroat industry.
Yeah.
So what pushes you to keep going forward?
I think specifically within the music space, I think um, it's been probably the area of culture that I've been the most interested in. It's something that if I had probably one wish, I'd probably say like turn me into an amazing musician, rapper, whatever it may be, so that I could go and do that. But unfortunately, I don't really have that skill there. So I've always been like, let me help out artists or people who need to be heard and give them that platform. I also think this was something that I'd seen in this really cool documentary about Tomorrowland a little while ago, and somebody was talking about how the essence of a human isn't just food, water, shelter. Like that the creativity specifically is a huge part of the human experience, in terms of what actually makes a person light up and like feel something. So whether that's painting, visual art, audio, anything, I think that creativity is just so important to the human experience. So I think that that's something that I'm really interested in, just in terms of like what I want to be able to contribute back to the world, is like
Yeah.
helping people add that. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's something that we don't often talk about too. It's like just because you're not necessarily a creative, like you're always creating. Like I think we as
Hmm.
humans are innate, like it's in our nature to create,
Yeah.
um, which is awesome. Um, cool. So I'm going to move on to some more kind of like, I guess, more emotional, personal questions. But
Yeah.
what are some of the hardest things that you face or have faced in your creative journey?
I mean, I think as a freelancer or a contractor, there's the biggest difficulties I think really are that there's no protections and this type of thing. Like you don't have sick days, you don't have whatever it may be, you don't have those benefits, those perks, but also just like a lot of the times you're at the will of the client. You might not get paid, you might do the work, you might have the best experience, you might not get paid. You don't really have many actual protection to really help you in this situation. There's no HR for this type of stuff. So I think that, and that's something that I've really tried to, you know, combat. So with Free Game, which was the series that I did at the beginning of the year and hoping to bring
Mhm.
back soon, it was like I wanted to bring together a bunch of creatives and be like, yo, a bunch of freelancers specifically, and say like, yo, let's share tips with each other. Let's make
Mhm.
this knowledge transfer public because it's a very hard thing to navigate. I think most of the people I know, and I'm sure you can attest to this yourself. Like most of the people I know who are doing pretty well right now are successful in this. Like have all the horror stories, and like they'll say like a lot of us have had to figure it out for ourselves because there is no roadmap. So I'd say that's a pretty big thing. And then obviously I think COVID was a massive, a massive difference, obviously to the world, but within the music space specifically, it's been a pretty hard year and a half for
Totally.
the music industry. There's no concerts really still to this day,
Yeah.
and it's not necessarily that we're missing out on these experiences and stuff like that. It's more so the growing pains of going from one era to the next era. I'm sure, like if I was a blogger in the era when it was
Yeah.
switching to streaming and playlists, I'd be feeling the same thing, being like, "Yo, like how do I adapt?" So I think it's just those are some of the things that I have to think about.
Yeah, definitely, and with the music industry, it's like touring is such a huge part of that. It's like
Yeah,
everyone kind of suffers. It's like not just the artist, it's like the manager, the tour manager, the photographers, the creatives behind everything that goes into like touring assets. So
yeah,
definitely.
100%.
But I want to go back to a point that you talked about, which was like, as creative entrepreneurs, like no one really teaches us that like you're basically your own boss, like you're your
Yeah,
own manager, you're your own you deal with like your own bookkeeper, and there's
yeah,
so many things that they don't teach you, which is why I think Parsons Entrepreneur Academy is amazing, is because we're trying to kind of build the foundations for all creative entrepreneurs. um,
definitely.
but on the topic of being your own boss, how do you structure your days? Like what does your morning routine look like what does it look like in a day of Hospey?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm probably the worst person to answer this question because my days are so erratic, and like as I'm moving into more, like I think as I get further along in my career and move into more projects with these, where I'm actually working with people, I
Hmm.
feel like my days have changed. 'Cause I'm a total night person. So like if you want to know like
Oh,
my nighttime creative routine, it's like I probably have a way better formula than like my morning routine. So that's something I'm trying to really get into. But like currently, I think something that's been a pretty interesting thing with the work from home is like having that commute still. So like, in the morning, going for a little walk around the neighborhood and being like,
mhm.
getting your brain turned on and feel like you're transitioning into work mode. And at the end of the day, I try to do the same thing there. I would say, um, I don't know. For me, I'm a very like short, high energy burst person. And then, I sit back, I chill, I do whatever, taking some more content, and then I go back in and grind for a little bit. So I think that's part of how I prefer to work. Um, but also, I think with this the Zoom culture has actually been helpful for me, just in terms of like the sheer amount of meetings that I have now that are just like creative brainstorms and stuff like that. I think are actually have
Mhm.
actually been pretty helpful to my process.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of the times, like within the entrepreneurship space, it's like there's like all this talk about hustle culture and grind culture. Like, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that? And like, like having to hustle and working 7 days a week and working, nonstop. Like, what are your kind of views on that?
Um, I think it's a double-edged sword. You know what I mean? Like, there's you're definitely always on when you're, any sort of creative, but
Totally.
I think it's very important to, take those breaks and have an actual life. I think personally as an entrepreneur, like my style will never be, um, I don't take breaks. I don't go on vacations. I don't do this. I don't do that. Like, I think you definitely you need to have time for real life because at the end of the day, we're humans. And I think um, one of the one of the best like creative quotes that I've heard from a pair of last little while was I was in a session with Pretty Decent, which is this great um, platform for for other creatives to come in and share. And one of the girls in this presentation said on the topic of dream job, she's like, I don't have a dream job. Like, I don't dream of labor. That's not what that's not what
Yeah.
I'm dreaming of. And like I when I heard that, I was like, as somebody who totally embraces the grind, is always trying to improve and get better. At the same time, I'm like, my life is not my job, it's not my work.
Hmm.
And that's what I do love about this creative stuff, is that there's a lot of stuff that I do. So for example, like the photo book I did a few years ago, like that was a trip with friends that I went out there. I shot a bunch of rolls of a film, and just like was able to vibe out for a week and have a great actual real life experience. Then maybe down the road that actually turned into something that became part of you know my offering to the public, or my work, I guess you could say. So I'm fortunate that my job has a lot of those overlaps. But yeah, no, I'm definitely, I'd say that's kind of my mentality on it, is that I'm not dreaming of labor. I'm definitely always thinking about, like, what comes first, and that's real life to me. So
Totally. And so outside of like creative projects, outside of work, like what are the things that bring you joy? Like what, kind of keeps you level headed and keeps, bring that kind of life aspect back into your life?
yeah, definitely. I think I'd say it's really those pillars of the culture, because obviously we got music in there, and that's the space that I do my work and whatever. But it's like sports is a huge thing for me. It's something I grew up playing sports, but also now getting into the stage of my life where I'm old and washed up, but now I'm becoming a mega fan. So that's been a fun journey for me. I would say I'd say there's definitely an interest in in streetwear and fashion, that type of stuff. I think I'm always, especially living in Montreal now, I'm loving just getting outside and interacting with people and seeing what people are rocking. And then even I think that's where this this gaming space comes in now as well for me, because I feel like that's slowly becoming that fourth pillar of culture, where you can't really separate any of these four things. And I think that's been a pretty interesting an interesting space to just like see what's going on. But also, just getting outside, spending time with family, like whatever may be, traveling. I think that's been something that's hurt with
Yeah.
this COVID thing. But those are the things I like. I like doing.
Yeah. And for all the New Yorkers on this stream,
Yeah,
Hospey is a
100%.
Knicks fan. So,
Yeah, 100%.
okay, cool. So, my next question is how do you deal with rejection and how do you stop it from affecting your creative process? I know it's something that a lot of us, especially as people who, we're self-employed pretty much, like
Hmm.
we are doing the work to get clients and sending out pitches and stuff. So how do you deal with, when a client gets back to you and says, actually, we've picked someone else, or,
Yeah.
we've moved on?
Yeah, no, I think I mean, it's a hard and very real thing. Especially over this last year, like this has probably been the most that I've had like projects come back that it's like, yo, we want to do this, but like there's no budget because our artists aren't making money, no one's touring, no one's whatever. Like, and so I think to me, it's the same thing as like, you know, the small wins as well. Like you got to embrace the failures, but also I think it's the most cliche thing ever. I mean, but you're learning each time, and it's not necessarily the um I don't know, like learning some weird like moral lesson. I'm not really talking about it in that way, but more so just like you do. I think in each client you approach, you're always picking up a new little piece of information. As long as you're staying attentive to that and being like, okay, cool. So this is the part of it that actually really went well, and I think that there's an opportunity for. And so the next time I approach the same client or somebody else, this is kind of the approach I'm going to take. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, like you got to embrace the failures, and you also got to celebrate all the small wins. Because within each one of those things, I think there's a tendency to only want to celebrate those massive successes. And like
Hmm.
okay, I went on this tour that has like the best thing that's ever happened. That's the only thing I can celebrate. And anything that's smaller than that, I'm not going to celebrate until I top it. It's like, nah, for me, it's like in between those failures, you're always going to have the small successes, whether it's day to day, whether it's getting up in the morning, whatever it is. Like you got to celebrate each one of those things. And I think that helps counteract some of those quote unquote failures.
Totally. I think everything should be celebrated. I feel like whether accomplishments are big or small, I think they're worth celebrating.
Definitely.
That's awesome. But how do you separate your art from your emotions? I think that's something a lot of creative entrepreneurs deal with is, when things become your life or they become basically like your baby, it's really hard to sometimes, if something goes wrong or, it's easy to get emotionally affected by your work. Like, how do you separate the two?
I think it's easier for me because I don't have that dedicated medium. I feel like for sure if I was, specifically consider myself a photographer, specifically consider myself um, a different one of those things, I think it'd be a lot harder because I think then more of my personal stuff would bleed into my career and professional aspirations. But I don't know. I think that if you're we got some of the best jobs in the world doing this creative stuff. So if you're losing the joy in it, then it probably means that you're overlapping it a little too much. Which again is it's important as entrepreneurs to still have that passion. If you feel that fire burning out, like it means either something needs to change, and it's again just being attentive. But it means something either needs to change, or maybe you're ready to do something new. And for me, I'm the person that always I'm always trying to do something new. Like um, whether it's a completely different industry. Like I've been teasing for years that I'm going to start a tea company one day. Like all these types of things. Like I'm definitely always trying to stay you know flexible in terms of what it is that I'm trying to do.
Totally. And what are some of the signs to you personally of burnout? Like, how do you know and when do you know when you're like, I'm hitting a plateau or I feel stagnant? Like, what are the kind of tell signs that you see within yourself?
Um, that's a good question. Um, I don't know. I think it's I guess like when I'm thinking about it, it just feels like it's a feeling. It's that dread for me. I think how I would describe it. I'm sure it's different for most people. Is Groundhog Day. Like that's the thing that I'm always running from. Is the
Totally.
feeling of like every day I wake up, I'm just trying to get through the day. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, I'm just trying to get through the day, and then it's another day. And it's just another day because they're all the same. Um, I think for me, that's when I know I'm getting burnt out or I'm not enjoying it anymore. Is that feeling of every day has been the same for X amount of time, and that's part of probably what people feel when they're feeling failures and that type of stuff. And so that's why I guess it is important to go out and try to do those new things or have other spaces that you're in that do light you up, so that you stay creative.
Definitely. And I think that's something that we don't often tell creative entrepreneurs is that those slumps happen so often. Like you feel
Straight up.
burnout so much, especially when you're like setting your own schedules and you're not. I mean, we don't do the 9 to 5 to work the like 7 to 7
Yeah.
basically. Like we're constantly on the go, right?
Yeah.
Um,
100%.
what are some bits of advice that you would give to entrepreneurs who are maybe going through like a slump or a creative block?
Um. For me, I think my biggest one, and again, COVID has made it something that I need to work around. But for me, it's always like putting myself in a new setting. Like it's actually like absurd how many times I've gone on a small trip, whether it's locally or whatever, or internationally, gone on a small trip or a big trip, and came back, and it's like literally I could have went months being in like a block or haven't had even just like no opportunities come. And I feel like when you go on a trip and you see new things, smell new things, hear new things, whatever, like you're just completely in a space where everything you see is like it's completely new. I think it changes your perception so much that like I swear to God, every single time I've come back from something like the phone rings, the phone rings that same day I'm back and it's like, yo, here's a new opportunity. And I don't know what it is. Maybe it's you're putting that manifestation energy out there. But
Mhm.
like for me, that'd be my biggest tip is just like go try to change the scenery for a little bit.
Totally. I love that.
Yeah.
Um, so what are some things that you wish you knew sooner in your creative entrepreneur journey?
Um, I feel like probably a lot of the things that I wish I knew, like people had probably told me, and I was just like, nah, that's not true. Like,
Totally.
whether it's the industry being, tough and cutthroat or whatever it may be, or also just that, like, I think for me, um, if we're focusing this on like, career development as an entrepreneur, I think something I wish I knew a little bit earlier was one, gaining hard skills is very important. I'm the type of person who learns stuff as I go, and I feel like I've got a pretty big grasp on a lot of things. But having those actual like, okay, I'm trained in this thing, and I know every detail of it. I think that's very important because sometimes in your Swiss Army knife, it doesn't actually benefit you to not know
Hmm.
a few things, all the way through. I would say that having a mentor would be super important. Like for me, I've never really had that true mentor,
Hmm.
and I feel like that's something that a lot of people in this industry, and even with the work that I'm doing with Advance, I think a big part of that is like, okay, if you're a Canadian in the music a Canadian in the music industry, and then furthermore a Black Canadian in the music industry, it's like
Yeah,
there's not that many people that are around you that you're like, okay, you know they're laying out the path for you and helping you out, and making those connections or whatever. So I think that's something that I definitely would put a bigger emphasis on earlier. Obviously, I believe the same thing. I think Dewey had said that everyone around you could be a teacher, but at the same
totally.
time, I think there's definitely value in having that true mentor there.
Yeah. And so do you have a mentor and or just a general body of people that you go to for advice or that you look up to for their work?
Yeah, no, I don't. I've never had like an official mentor at all, and I think that I've had a decently good career for myself, but I definitely think that that's something that would probably help me be even a little farther now, and like avoid some of those mistakes. And again, it's kind of what I echoed with the idea of free game, and people like me and you, who don't have those people to kind of help lay out the roadmap. But I think that's probably why I have such an interest in, quicker media that is still,
Hmm.
um, it's still dense, I guess you'd say, with information. So that's why I like those long form podcasts where it's like 2 hours of somebody telling their story, and there's
Yeah.
so much you can pull for. I think that's probably why I'm not a huge reader, because for me, I'm a slow reader and it takes me too long to pull in information. I'm like, yo, just give me what I need to know, give me these highlights now. So definitely, I think that I've pulled a lot. So I've people I'd probably call a mentor that I've never met before that are just
Hmm.
those amazing creatives who've done dope things. So
Yeah, and I think because you weren't a kid of the internet, like I feel like community is so big as well. Like I feel
yeah,
like you're constantly learning from your peers. Like even if you're not
mm-hmm.
even necessarily in the same line of work. I mean, like we're in a group chat with like a bunch of people,
Mm-hmm.
um, and yeah, like we're constantly learning from people and seeing what they're up to, and it's always amazing.
Yeah, the whole
Um,
MMC is my mentors for sure. Like I'm always watching what people are doing, and it's a
Totally.
helpful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a question I love. What is your favorite accomplishment?
My favorite accomplishment. Um, I don't know. There's a lot. Like I definitely have a big value on projects that I've like done individually or like personally as passion project. I'd say I think the most recent one that I'm stoked on, and it's not that recent anymore, but was that photo book, because for me, I'd only been, doing photography for a few years at the time. It was a culmination of me being in London for about a year and a half at the time and seeing all the people that I'd met who actually came out to support me. I think that was huge. And just something that was tangible. I'd never really done that many things that were tangible. So to be able to have that, and I know your book got lost in the mail, but I think now that I'm back in Canada, I'm gonna get you one of them soon. But I'd say that was probably one of my one of my favorite accomplishments for sure.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Um, I think also up there would be your work with Corday. So I would love to hear more about kind of how that got started, what you
yeah,
do with him, all the ins and outs.
yeah, 100%. I think, yeah, definitely that's one of the wilder things that's ever happened. And so really with that, it was right after the trans store. There's a lot of artists and people reaching out to me. In fact, like some of my best clients or coolest friends that I've just like had a chance to meet and interact with. I met a lot of the people at that time, and he was one of those people who reached out to me. He was a random rapper with maybe 3,000 followers across all platforms, and like I don't know what it was, because really most people who were sending me stuff I wasn't even listening to. I was like, yo, cool, send me an email. Cool, send me an email. Because I was getting so much stuff coming through. But whatever reason, he sent this lyric video through, and I was like, all right, this looks kind of, this looks kind of cool. Let me check it out. And so, like, from the second I clicked it, I was just like, yo, this kid is crazy. And I remember I was in Calgary visiting my aunt after the tour. And I literally like went into her backyard and literally called him from there. It's just some university kid from Maryland, and I was just like, "Yo, I'm literally." I told him I was like, I'm nobody. I can't actually really do anything for you. Like I'm just some internet kid who got an internship. But like, if you do ever need anything, like hit me up, whatever. And something I'll say about him is that he's got that divine timing, that just that divinity in general, where it's like literally we hadn't really talked. We followed each other and whatever, chatted here and there, but it was like we hadn't really talked for maybe 5 6 months. And he hit me up right when I was thinking about going to LA for Complex Con, and literally I'd spoken to another artist right before that and said, I'm thinking about coming out to LA, but like really, like I don't really have a reason to go. So if something like shows itself as a reason, then maybe I'll actually like pull up. And literally he called me, but an hour later was like, "Yo, I'm thinking about going to Complex Con. We should pull up." And so that was the first time I had met him, and really from the moment we met, it was like this is a homie, this is a brother. And so started managing a few months after that, and right around the time that I went out to London was about the time that he started doing his first releases there, and seeing that growth has been amazing. So it was awesome to help him in those grassroots, you know, 10 to 12 months before everything really kicked off, and it's exactly what we're talking about here, where maybe 5 months before that first record came out, we sat on I don't know what we would have been on Skype or something back in the day before Zoom was a thing. Um, and we sat down for like 3 hours right before Christmas and just like laid down everything that we wanted to achieve in the next year. And this was an artist who was small, and he was saying stuff like, I want 5 videos to 1 million views next year. I want a video by Cole Bennett. I want this, I want that. And like,
Amazing.
I've never met anybody who was like, who I'm like, okay, like, that's cool, but like, whatever, like every single thing on that list, he wanted 3 major co-signers from rappers. Like, by the next year, like J.
Crazy.
Cole was hitting him,
Yep.
like all these people. And it was like, I've never seen somebody who everything that he's kind of, spoken into existence has actually, come through that quick. So yeah, that was really,
That's
it was
a
definitely,
beautiful story.
yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I still listen to Lost Boy to this day. Corday is incredible,
Yeah.
and I
Just wait for
think
that new project. It's going to blow your mind.
that's amazing. And I think I love the fact that he continues to dream and that he set almost like a blueprint of what he wanted for
Yeah.
his entrepreneurial journey. Like for his music. I think that's really important,
Yeah.
and it also helps to to not be so stuck on the now, and because that's hard. Like
Yeah.
seeing where you are versus where you could be is really difficult sometimes, and so for him to be able to map out a year's worth and for you to be able to build with him, I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
We are running out of time on the this portion. We're going
Yeah.
to move on to Q&A, but I did have one more question to kind of end this portion
Cool.
off. But what are you looking forward to doing next?
Um, there's a couple things I feel like I got to keep them under wraps or whatever. Definitely working in some new spaces. I think the biggest thing that I'm looking forward to is um, I don't know what I want to give away, but basically, the quote that I've been thinking about because I was listening to music to get hyped before we got on this was Benny the Butcher, and he said last year was about branding, this one about expanding. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
what I'm thinking. Like this
Mm-hmm.
whole year was really about me reaffirming myself. Not really in the same traditional way. Like I think I've done a good job at staying connected to people, but more so entering new industries. Whether it's the Canadian music industry or streaming or gaming or tea, any of those type of things. I think this year is about me kind of getting familiar in those spaces to other people, and next year I'm really trying to have some of those things blossom.
That's amazing. Well, you sound like a jack of all trades, so I don't doubt that I'll be seeing your name and other amazing things in the zeitgeist of
Hope so.
social media. But
Yeah.
thank you so much. We are going to move on to the Q&A. So for
Yeah.
everyone that is listening, please go ahead and drop all your questions down below, and we will put them up on the screen, and Hospey will answer all of them. Give it a second.
Yeah. Of
They
course.
might be a
Let's do
lag
it.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Actually, there already are a few here.
Perfect.
Um, actually, a decent amount. Let's see. We have We have a question. We had questions coming in from 6 p.m. actually, like,
Damn.
which is awesome. So Andrew asked at 6:07, what is your favorite article on RLGT and why?
Mm. Um, I think it would either be the open letters that my co-founder Hassan and I used to write. We used to write very moody, sad boy little letters to our audience every now and then. Those are always fun. And then I think the series that I did on like Canadian university culture and why it was lacking so many of the things that American university culture was, had and embraced. I think that was a really fun series to write and something that I always still think about. So.
Amazing. Rachel asked, when you're strategizing for different artists, how do you individualize your approach to each artist? It's a great question.
I think it's a similar process, but it's just by proxy of how unique each one of these situations is. I think that's kind of what helps me shape this. So the same way that if I was doing something like that was going to be across multiple platforms, and each one of those platforms I'd be doing a slightly different approach, whether it's something as micro as the caption or the actual asset itself. I think with these artists, when we do these strategic planning sessions, what I really try to do is ask as many questions as possible. I take a lot of notes always by hand, just so I can go back and be like, okay, cool. Now let's find the common thread or tie it together, and then again find how that relates to the content that we're making.
Amazing. Next question is, how do you acquire new clients? How much of your business is based on cold calls and emailing?
That's definitely changed, I would say, over time. Um, but like for the beginning part of my career, I've actually, I mean, even to this day, I really haven't done that many cold calls or emails. Usually because of my network and it always kind of growing a little bit. There's always people who are interested in finding out what it is that I do, or people that I've just like I have personal relationships who want to work or whatever that I've been able to kind of um, get in with or have connected me to other people. So I'd say previously it was definitely a lot less, and now as I go forward, I think with having these new spaces that I want to step into, I think it's less about cold calling and email and trying to sell my service as it is building relationships with people in different places, because having you know contacts isn't really as important as it is to have relationships. So I really want to be able to go in and actually meet these people and put name to face, and yeah, so that's what I'd say is kind of my process.
That's great. Um, does your freelance work affect your personal life? Is it tough to shut off your creative side and just relax with friends and family? That's a great question.
um Yeah, definitely. I think when I'm in the zone, like it's very hard. I mean, even today, like thinking about doing this interview, and also we had a big project go at work. It was like I feel like I barely ate today. I was just pacing around the house. Like every time I got up to go get some meat or go get a drink of water, like I'm always kind of, my brain is on. I'm like, okay, crap. Let me make a note. Let me run back to the computer. Let me do this. So I'd say sometimes it is, but I think that's why it's really important, as I mentioned, to like have those things I enjoy that are completely outside of music or outside of work, that I have that like don't feel like work at all, or just like brain relaxation.
That's awesome. How is the tea business going?
Yeah, tea business is good. Is going good. I got the first blend. That's actually what I'm drinking right now. I was working on in the summer, so working on some packaging, and hopefully I can start doing a little small batch stuff. So yeah, look out for that.
That's
That it's going to be
awesome.
called Cup and Bowl. So yeah.
I have a question for you. Why
That's good.
tea? Like, what made you want to get into the tea business?
Honestly, well, one, like I mentioned, I want something that's completely outside of music, culture, whatever. Like, I want something
Love it.
completely outside of that, but I mean, it's kind of counterproductive. So I'm sure I'm going to pull it back in some way. But I don't know. I think it's just, it's an interesting thing. I think for me personally, it's like, I just think that young people, there's not that brand they associate with, you know what I mean? Like in coffee, like people have that type they have. Well, obviously with third wave coffee, there's so much personality and expression that goes into it. Where T right now, it's like, it's your grandma's stash in the cupboard. So I'm definitely trying to do something there. I just think it's a really interesting overlap with, with youth culture that hasn't really been broached. So yeah, that's what I'm interested in.
Amazing. Make sure to send me some of that tea once you're
Yeah,
done with it.
I'm gonna send
I
it down.
think
I'm gonna
you're
send out the friends and family batches first, and then we'll sell. So
love it.
you'll get that first batch.
Totally. I love how your girlfriend commented. First blend is fire.
Yeah, I made her, and she got the second blend already too. She's already ahead of the game.
Amazing. Okay. How do you set boundaries between your clients and what tea are you drinking?
um, how do I set boundaries between my clients? I guess they're referring to like. Okay, I guess I understand the question. So I'd say really communication is very key. Like with every project I'm on, I think it's very important, as we mentioned, for contractors and freelancers to protect themselves because there is no protections out there. So if we're doing a contract, like I'm no lawyer at all, but I'm making sure I'm reading every line of that and making sure that like, okay, what we agreed on is what it says here because at the end of the day, that's what's going to come back to at the end if something does go awry. So I think for me. Um, I really try to lay it out that way that when we start a project, I say exactly what it is. I'm not over promising. I let them know what my process is, etc. So I'd say that's kind of the play. And then the tea I'm drinking, I can't give away the whole blend, but it's an oolong with a little bit of ginger and a few other things in there. So it's gonna be a nice like late morning, early afternoon tea for y'all. So
Yeah, and we know that ginger is so important. Every POC household.
need that
Ginger
exactly
is like the key ingredient after
straight up,
garlic.
straight up.
Yeah, totally. Do you ever reject contracts? How much damage can be done to your brand by taking on the wrong project? That's a great question.
I wouldn't say, um, they're necessarily like contracts or whatever, but it's more so in the pitch stage. Is like I'm definitely like anybody. There's so many people who want to reach out to you and say, and usually this isn't for client work. This is more so like, yo, I'm starting a business. I want you involved in this or whatever. It's like there's so many people who hit you up on the DMs and be like, yo, this is what I want to do. This is why it's going to be dope, but they don't have any actual plans. So I always say, yeah, definitely appreciate you reaching out. Like I'm definitely interested. Shoot me an email with everything you're thinking, and then we can hop on a 15-minute call and figure out if it's going to work. So I definitely think that taking on the wrong projects is just like it's like being a musician, like doing that
Yeah,
wrong
totally.
collaboration or getting on the song with like an artist that's at the space. It can help if you do it right and do it tastefully, or it can be like, yeah, what is this sellout behavior as people look at it. So for me, I'm just always trying to protect the brand, and as a personal branding person, that's what it is. That's what it's all about.
That's great. Um, we have someone asking, what's your favorite album right now?
My favorite album right now, definitely. I'm going right now. I've been going back to a lot of tens. So for Broken Ears, I've been listening to quite a bit. Um, the new project a little bit. For
Amazing.
me, I think my big form of discovery has just been like going on the YouTube and letting the algorithm go there. I think I like their algorithm the best. So I'm always listening to Boz. I'm always listening to Sir. Charlotte Day Wilson's one of my favorite artists.
Love Charlotte.
So yeah,
Yeah,
those type of things. I'm in the late summer vibe right now.
totally. And Thames is like her come up,
Yeah,
incredible. It's like little Sims. Like I
yeah,
really want to do like someone needs to do a case study on their come up because they just
yeah,
out of nowhere blew up and like without the help of like other artists too. Like they didn't need a
yeah,
cosign, they just blew up.
hundred
Really
percent.
awesome.
Yeah,
Great playlist. So I
yeah.
approve. Um, how do you stay efficient and productive working with creative partners who are also close friends?
Um, I mean, that's a great question because I think part of the value and part of the why what you get out of working with friends is so like authentic is because you're not trying to maintain that efficiency and productivity like where we come on the call and say this is the agenda, this is whatever. But I think also a big thing, and it's something that I've done better in practice in some cases than others. Like having somebody who is really going to be that leader on the project. So for me, sometimes I might just be like, okay, let me be the project manager on this next thing, and then whatever comes through on this project, X person is going to be the project manager there, and just like make sure that we're staying we're staying on track. So I think, yeah, just making sure you delegate, and again, it's with the clear communication, but also I think that when you're working with close friends, you have that intrinsic pressure, just being like, I want to do something dope and like show these people that I actually, know what I'm talking about and that I can do it. So I think that's another benefit of working with your friends.
Amazing. Someone asked, do we need a How to Make It in America reboot?
Yo, 120%, like 2,000%. That show needs to come back.
Maybe a Canada version too.
Yo, 100%. I don't know what artist we put on that. Like if we still have Cuddy on it, but yeah, no, they need to bring that back for sure.
Next question. How do you use the internet mindfully and avoid the bad/annoying stuff?
Um, Good question. I mean, it's that's a big. I mean, it's a tall task, I think, for us internet kids. I think so many of us like get our joy and stuff from being mindful on the internet, or like the stuff that we're taking in, and probably so much of the like the feels that we get into are probably because of the internet as well. Um, I don't know. To me, I'm a serial like I'll cut like everybody on my timeline at any point for any reason. Like if I need to, like I always go through and like again, I think the idea of a creative diet being anything you consume is what you're going to output. So if I'm consuming bullshit on my feed every single day that's like not conducive to what I'm trying to do, like one, I'll definitely cut that out, but two, I'm always looking for new stuff to be adding to that creative diet and being like, okay, cool, let me take your stuff. So I think that's big, but then also I think there's tools on the internet. I love Calm. I love using that for like meditation and stuff. There's lots of tools that you can have on the internet that are also going towards helping you stay mindful.
Totally. I think, wasn't there an ad with LeBron James for Calm?
Yo, his series on Calm is fire. He's
I'm
done
going
like
to use it.
he has like 4 meditations on Calm. I listen to all of them. It's like one of them's preparing before the big game, so it's about like sleep. Like he's got a bunch of great things, and so
Yeah,
it's just one of those cool intersections of the internet where it works.
totally. I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah, definitely check that.
Do you have any plans on getting into NFT work? And how do you think NFTs will change the music industry as they continue to grow?
Um, it's interesting. Like I've been having a lot of conversations about NFTs. I just had a great conversation with a friend recently about it. Who's just putting me on game. Um, and the project that we're working on with Elser right now is kind of it's going to be our commentary on NFTs and how we kind of visualize it. So currently, like specifically, if you mean me selling NFTs or even buying and trading them right now, I don't really know too much about it. I've just been kind of trying to stay attentive to it from afar. And in terms of the music industry, like I think there's a lot of cool things to be done. And again, that's exactly the conversation I just had recently was the idea of artists making their own tokens for fandom. I think that's a pretty interesting thing there in terms of um, your value as a fan almost being like having a number on it. And I'm not sure if that's if that's going to be a good thing or not, but I think it'll definitely change in that space. And then also, I think memorabilia and all this type of stuff is very important to this section of culture. So if that's going to be the new ownership, I think it needs to take a few more steps to get to that, where people who own these NFTs are getting that cut if whatever happens, or however it may be. Or maybe to me, I'm really interested in how physical can interact with these digital spaces. But yeah, I'd say that it's going to change the music industry in a few ways for sure, especially even on the artist side, the graphic artist side specifically. But yeah, haven't gotten too into it yet, but hopefully soon.
Yeah, it's definitely a beast like that. The NFT world is like
It's so much
ever
fun.
evolving. It's a lot to take in for sure.
Mhm.
Just as a reminder to everyone watching, we're gonna have last call for questions. So if you have anything that you want to ask Hospey, please drop it in the chat and we'll get through them as best as we can. And Tony said, "This guy said CLB album of the year." Did you say that?
I did definitely not say CLB's album of the year, but I've definitely been defending it, and I'll continue to defend it. I mean, like, I'm gonna be 120% real. Like, I know not that many people who are in this. This. First of all, I'm the biggest Kanye defender too, and everyone is on the timeline talking crazy about him for the last 2 years. I remember each and every one of those people who is now saying, "Oh yeah, Drake sucks, Kanye, whatever." But I'm definitely like, I know that most people right now, if they're gonna go put an album on shuffle or just like trying to listen to a couple records, like CLB has a lot of those records that I would listen to one off, at a time. Like if I'm listening to Donda, then I'm trying to listen to that whole project, or at least a good section of it. So there's a time and place for all this music. Not album
Totally.
of the year by any sense, but
I was gonna say, I was like, Donda or CLB? Like, which one are you picking?
I mean, yeah, different art for different times. If I got 2 hours to spare, then I'm gonna listen to Donda. If I got 20 minutes and I'm putting four records on repeat or on shuffle, like there's endless. There's not that many skips, and we're listening to it that way. So I'm going to
Fair
CLB.
enough. Yeah, fair enough. Which segues beautifully into our next question. What three albums have been the most impactful on you personally and
Ooh,
professionally?
that's a good question. That's a great question. The three albums I'd say, personally, professionally, would be. I'm probably gonna have to say four, but so it would be Mac Miller, Best Day Ever. That was one of the first project that I really listened to from front to back. Like I remember I was in high school and I wasn't that big of a music head. I was an athlete at the time,
Totally.
and I didn't even have an iPod. I don't know what I had, like some SanDisk player or whatever. And then just heard about this guy, downloaded and went for a walk. And I remember I came back home, I ordered a sweatshirt right away. I was like, "Yo, this dude is cold. Like I don't even know who he is. I probably didn't even know he was a white rapper at the time. I was just like, this guy is like an incredible artist. Like got to support." So I'd say that was one of them. Sideline Story by J. Cole, again, one of those
Definitely.
first
Classic.
few projects that came out in that time and era. That was huge. It's got some of my favorite records on there. And then EP by Donald Glover. Those are all came out in the same time frame, but
Yep.
like personally, those really like pushed me forward. Um, and then the other one that I would mention, I guess actually probably is still two, is Boz Too High to Riot. That's like my favorite album
That's
last
great. That's a great
years.
album. And the J.
Like
Cole feature, it's really great. That's a
exactly, and
solid
then obviously
album.
Chance. Anything by Chance that's not an album is just any of those first three projects. Like I mean, those have changed my life professionally for
Absolutely.
sure. So yeah.
Yeah. No, for sure. Love that. How much does your work factor into where you choose to live? Sounds like you've lived it all. Like sounds like you've lived all over the world. How much of that was due to your work?
Um, all of it up until COVID, probably because, and I've talked about this is actually my specific topic when I did free game, was that for me, some people it feels like a risky thing to move across the world or whatever it may be, up and take all their stuff to London. Like, but for me, the idea of putting yourself in the best place to succeed is the most important thing. So if I'm on Vancouver Island trying to make it in the music industry versus being in LA or London or whatever it is, like I'm honestly probably limiting myself, in terms of the opportunities I have. So for me, I'm always like, even though it seems risky in principle to like move across the world to a place you've never been before, in my head, I've always been like, okay, I'm trying to be in a place that's gonna, serve me the best creatively, professionally, whatever. With COVID, that definitely upended that for a little bit, but coming back to Montreal, that was the reason why I did want to stay in Canada, until everything kind of blows over. But this is such a beautiful, cultural city, just so much stuff going on that's kind of why I'm out here right now.
Amazing. Love
Yeah.
that. Stephanie asks, are you still involved in Elsewhere and are there any upcoming events?
Definitely still involved in Elsewhere. We we just like honestly because it was such a organic project in terms of what we were just talking about with doing stuff with friends. Um, it's it has those waves of like we chat every single week sometimes, and sometimes we're like real life takes over and we're kind of all off doing our stuff. But we funny enough just had our first real conversation, about a project maybe 2 or 3 days ago. So hopefully we got, something coming soon, and this one this one will be pretty interesting, I think, to everybody. It's a global project, so I think it'll be really cool if we can pull this one off.
Awesome. Do you ever require your clients to sign NDAs, or have you ever asked to sign an NDA before working on a project? It's a great
I've
question.
never made clients on NDAs because, I mean, my stuff isn't the stuff that necessarily needs to be kept secret. But I'm definitely on a lot of artists will want you on NDAs, or labels, etc. Not necessarily that I'm handling anything that's that crucial, but I think it's just part of the process. So,
Awesome. We have one last question, and it's not at all work related, but I think it's a good way to end this conversation is, has your cooking improved, or are you still king of the microwave? I feel
I
like this needs
mean,
context.
honestly, well, no, it's because I can never make a 5-star 5-course meal in the microwave, but um, no, I mean, this should have been a question for for Kaylee, but my cooking, I've always been able to cook. I'm just a lazy person, but I mean, cooking though is just like, any of these creative processes there, where it's like it's mostly all understanding the principles, right? And then as long as you know the basics, you can really apply it to anything. There's a lot of people that don't think who understands basics. So growing up working in kitchens and stuff, I learned those early. So now I'm able to, as I get older and stop eating nachos every day, I'm learning a few new recipes.
Totally. And I feel like as a creative, we're all so busy all the time, like we always forget to eat. So
Exactly. That's why I say creative diet so much and not my actual physical diet, because it's
creative
definitely
diet.
that's not on point. That's something I'm working on. So,
I love that. Well, that's all the time that we have for today. But thank you so much, Hospey, for your time. I'm
of
sure
course.
that everyone has taken a lot out of this conversation. Thank you to everyone for tuning in and listening to us chat. I hope you enjoyed everything that we said today. And yeah, make sure you follow Hospey to stay on top of his projects, especially his tea business. Totally kidding. He has a lot of awesome things going on that are in the works. So make sure to follow him so you can stay on top of that. And make sure you follow Parsons Entrepreneur to stay on top of our future events. We have some amazing creatives coming up, just like Hospey, so you definitely don't want to miss out on that. Thank you again to everyone, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.